Good evening. It is December 8th, 2024, and tonight we are reading Ral of the Sky Mountain People, written by James A. Greig. Ral came down from the woods on the edge of the Kwai River. As a result of the rich nutrients that line the banks of the ancient river, the surrounding forest yields radiant, lush hues in a blend of green and golden brown. It has been fed for decades by the ice-tipped mountains to the east behind him. Echoing in his head are the words of Koltath, who claims to have had another sighting. Although Koltath was said to be delusional. Had to be. He was obsessed by the stories of the ancients. Flying machines? Impossible. The climate of this region holds all the answers in the way the weather is always changing. You must stay rational, Ral thought to himself, kneeling down on the riverbank edge. The soil beneath his planted knee is a damp mixture of clay and river sawgrass. Moisture quickly soaks into his deerskin trousers, darkening the supple leather. Between boulders lined by reeds and pickerel weed, on the verge of full bloom, those brilliant iris-colored flowers, Ral scoops a handful of icy water to flush his naked face. You must stay rational. Things could easily be explained. Massive cloud plumes rolled in constantly from the west, picking up moisture from fertile plains of the mid-valley Kinrush. As the behemoths roll in, they meet the cold air descending down from the tops of the mountains. The resultant collision always does strange things to the clouds. Often, massive thunderheads develop, creating a deluge across the lower highlands. The approach of budding time often has the most dramatic displays of weather patterns. Ral remembers as a child how he would lay down on his back in a grassy floral glade amidst the deep woods and stare up at the changing cloud patterns for hours during budding time. He would stay still so long, mesmerized by the morphing clouds forms, that it wasn't unusual for a bird to glide down next to him and pick the grasses for seed or insect. One time, a small doe had cautiously grazed its way within mere steps of Ral, seemingly not to notice him, until the boy made a small, jubilated exhale as Cloud came into view in the shape of what looked like a mythical flying serpent. Startled, yet soundlessly, the deer bounded off back into the presumed safety of the woods. That was the magic of it all, and it is of no surprise that any boy wouldn't have returned to enjoy the harmony of nature such as that, time and time again. The chill of the water relieves Ral and turns his mind like a gentle rolling stone. He agrees with his thoughts and his childhood memories that the weather, the clouds, that was the logical explanation. The elders are notorious and loved for their wild stories of the ancients. The strange things they described that were passed down by dictation for seemingly centuries were the sort of fiction that drew in every villager. Children would take a story and literally run with it in their play. They would climb the firstborn pines, edging the river at its deeper banks, and jump off a branch to drop into the Kwai while exclaiming they were in a sky flower, a thing loosely described from the stories of the elders. Children at play, as though they were birds in flight. Silliness. He stared catatonically into the shimmering, calm ripples of the flowing river, sleepily in thought as greenish amber eyes traced waxy clumps of bubbles floating by. It all seems too simple, too fanciful, yet plausible. No, they are just stories for children. Stories of flying serpents and flying machines. If one is not careful, he will fall into madness like Koltath, believing fantasies are real and imagining sightings of the make-believe. Life is too simple in the woods and foothill mountains. Beasts, birds, fish, all things big and small do exist here. True. But everything has its place and order in the balance of natural existence. Nature rules all. It is chaotic and often unpredictable, yet equally calm and subdued. And even still, there are patterns and order to it all. From childhood, Ral knew the histories the elders spoke of. Those are more rooted in fact. It is known that the people of the West have tools and mechanisms that the people of the mountains did not. In fact, it is understood that farther from Ral's mountain homeland, the more advanced societies appear. Those more prosperous societies were to blame for the overtaking of the land that once belonged to his ancestors. They wrought the land for their own spoils and agricultural needs by fighting back his people. The barbarians is what they chose to call the Sky Mountain people. This is taught from a young age in his village and in the nearby mountain villages. It is a mantra for his people, those of the Sky Mountain. Ral, disliking the idea of being a victim of the past, doesn't want to believe in it. He doesn't want to allow it to weaken him, in that some other group of people, mere men, could possibly have power over him or the Sky Mountain people. Alternatively, he was sympathetic to his people's cause and continued to push to a rebellion in the future. When the elders see the sign, then the people shall descend from the mountain to reclaim what is theirs, or so it is prophesied. He has heard of other village factions already far beyond the Kwai and on the banks of the Doral, readying to carry out the next evolution in what will likely be a never-ending dispute for rights to land. Has the sign already shown itself? He shrugs his shoulders unknowingly and is still in a daze of thoughts. Nearly approaching manhood, Ral is ready to see the world beyond the Kwai. All his training has him poised to fight along the factions, but a part of him lacks the heart for it. The world fascinates him, not the war. He wants to break out of the forest in the mountain scrubland. Of all the stories he has heard, certainly the answers are out of the pass of the river. What kind of mysteries? Snap! The sound of a single twig breaking gave way across the Kwai. Ral's eyes dart to the direction of the sound as he slowly shifts up from his kneeling perch along the river, staying crouched, low and ready. The figure across the river is obvious in enormity. Despite the shadows, it shrouds itself within. Closer to the water, the dark giant comes, revealing itself into the amber glow of the morning. Identifying the beast, Ral freezes, stiff. Directly opposite the river to which the two entities lock eyes, the thought of warm urine running down his leg frightens Ral. Even more as he realizes he is losing his usually calm demeanor. Black, hollow eyes, the size of small apples, look out from a worn and fearsome face like that of a bear. Frothy, white foam that is pinked by presumably blood stands in brilliant contrast in the sunlight against the beast's black, furry hide. The fur stands briskly and mangy with grayish tiger-like stripes that begin to appear behind the head and blends from a faded pattern to a more distinguished variation by its rear end. 4 legs match a gradient from the behemoth's torso to a light gray with no strips nearing its claws. More unsettling, evidence of blood stains these gray booties. By Sky, it's an Ursara. Ral practically gasps while consuming his own thoughts in amazement at the rare creature just across the river from him. His groin feels like squeezing tourniquet, and an unquenchable lump has already formed in his throat when a thought creeps into his brain. Cold, obsidian eyes peer deeply into Ral's, unmoving, as the words, not of his own, form in his mind.
Yes, I am he.
Neither creature moves now, both staring, eyes locked, in the forest a deafening silence. The thought of urinating himself returns briefly as his heart races, realizing he is formulating a response to the strange voice that entered his head. You can hear me. The beast lowers and struggles in moving slightly closer to the water's edge, eyes penetrating Raoul's, and the raspy, deep voice rings again.
I hear many creature, many human. I know their movements. I know their actions. I can sense their next thoughts.
This made Raoul wonder if the Usara knew how close to pissing himself he really was, and how terrified this unlikely encounter was making him feel. You can hear me. You have been hearing me.
Yes, you were thinking loudly, incessantly, like a fool.
The voice, nearly booming in Raoul's mind, sounds as ominous as the beast sending the thoughts. Finally, near the water, the creature manages to crude gulp of river water, leaving trails of foamy spittle and sinewy blood to the stream down atop the flowing water. You heard me thinking about what I saw. With great effort, the beast pushed itself back away from the river's bank and to the shadows of the dense vegetation where it had originally revealed itself. Practically panting, in a strained grumble, the words came to Raoul's mind again.
Many strange things are in these woods.
Usara let out a giant, audible sigh that Raoul could clearly hear, not in his mind, but from the beast, as it no longer resisted gravity's pull on his large body. A small utterance of dirt puffed out from under the behemoth as twigs cracked and shrubs were flattened to never be the same again. The beast continued in Raoul's head.
I have been to the farthest points north and south in this range of mountains. I have seen many things. From the shadows that were my refuge, I will believe anything. Even what I saw today barely surprised me.
You're dying. His thought was flat, matter of fact. The beast no longer seemed as serious of a threat as the initial surprise had been. Raoul had an insane urge to cross the river and stood upright, relaxing as he did.
You should come across to me. I not want to die without parting what needs to be known on this day.
The thoughts now coming through, almost broken, in a mistaken rhythm, like a young drummer, not quite on beat with the rest of the percussion. Raoul fought the urge to cross, could feel his joints twist slightly with anticipation to move, but frozen from the indecision to actually allow muscles to move limbs. The voice echoed again, deep and mysterious.
I have eaten many humans. It is easy. You are puny and fight without heart. You give up and make excuses to allow for your own demise. Rarely have I met a man worth his own weight.
This time, Raoul spoke out loud. Is that supposed to make me feel better? He was beginning to realize the insanity of this whole scenario. He began to question himself. First, I'm telling myself to think rationally, and now I'm talking to the most gigantic, fearsome beast I have ever seen.
No.
The beast's voice fills Raoul's mind again, while an inaudible, almost chuckling-like sound comes from the Usara's mouth, sending droplets of saliva flying.
No, you are not crazy, and I am not going to harm you. My days of devouring as I wish are through. Now come.
Shockingly, as the final thought from the Usara left Raoul's mind, he was surprised to find himself already ankle-deep in the river water. The creature seemed to be not only compelling its own thoughts upon Raoul, but also urging him to draw nearer. Raoul gave in and began slowly making his way across the quay. The closer he got, the more he realizes he is looking not at, but up at the beast. Its head was nearly the size of Rao in whole, and with a snort, the beast shot more blood-clotted mucus from its maw and nostrils. At this, Rao jumped in surprise, for he is nearly within arm's reach of the monstrosity. As if clearing its throat, in Rao's mind, the beast uttered,
Place your forehead on mine, dead center, between my eyes.
Timid, Rao replies aloud again, Do I have a chance?
No.
The thought echoes, matching a deep, painful sigh from her sorrow. This time, Rao manages to pinch off his bladder just moments before actually relieving himself. The slightest discoloration of damp deerskin is noticeable at his groin. He shakes his head in disbelief. Where the land meets the sky, and my people find salvation, there is no way. I am not coming any closer. What will you have of me? What is to be said now? I have come all this way, and now what? Despite his efforts to make a strong stance against coming any closer to danger, any closer to what would likely slay anything that ever got as close as he was now, Rao could feel the mythical beast working on his mind and autonomy.
Put your head upon mine.
And the commandment was given. Rao's eyes widen as he felt himself move closer. He lowers himself to his knees, each within grazing distance of the foaming goo surrounding the beast's mouth. He dips his forehead, resting it on the straw like the hair of the creature. A vibrating sensation emanates from the hairy forehead, radiating heat and wild energy. Both now have their eyes closed, darkness seemingly enveloping them by mind and scenery around their physical selves. A swirl of deep red, black, and navy colors begin to fill the picture box inside Rao's mind. He feels like vomiting. His pants flood with the warmth in his terror as he realizes he's releasing his bladder. A feeling of emptiness expands in the pit of his stomach as though he has just been flung off a rock ledge, swirling, tumbling in the air. What is land? What is sky? Which is up? Where am I? The colors swirl and begin to change, now more evergreen, charcoal, and deep mahogany, the colors of deep woods, dark woods, possibly evil woods. Please. Stop. Make it stop. Where are you taking me? Rao, forehead to forehead with the mythical and undying, Usara shakes as both creatures dive deeper into the shared mind. The vision clarifies slightly more to reveal vertical stands of deep, dark wood. The foliage is sick, dying, dead. The ground lacks nutrients and is damp, full of detritus, like fallen bark. Insects, carapaces, crumbling ashen bone, and withered up remnants of flora and fauna. Webs strangle the opening of the trunks of trees where once vibrant animal families may have previously sought refuge. The webs also cling and dangle from tree limbs in decay, long since from choking off greenery that once existed. Above, no sky seems to exist, only darkness that streams down between the branches, casting inverted shadows on an already grimly dark waste. What evil, dead forest have you taken me to? No reply reverberates back into Rao's mind. Feeling horrified, he also senses that the beast is no longer with him, but detached. He looks around, realizing he is looking from eyes with no body, and from an indefinite place, just slightly above the ground, from which he cannot move. As he scans his surroundings in the dead silence, he sees movement just beyond, some trees that look only slightly better off than the ones most present. From the direction comes a leaping fawn, bounding between the trunks of dying trees that have not yet been completely swallowed by darkness, dust, decay, or webs. The fawn enters the clearing upon which Ral is gazing, and it stops abruptly. Its ears dart back and forward. Ral can see its eyes caught between just to the front and left of it, causing the fawn to stop. But clearly, what is behind is just as alarming. Focusing in the direction of concern, Ral looks beyond the fawn to see a dark, cloaked figure like that of a man. The silence is unnerving, and Ral realizes he is without speech as well. No noise is to be heard from behind the fawn, even though its ears continue to dart back behind it, seeking for a sound inaudible to Ral. Time seems to slow as debris comes flying from behind the fawn, startling it to bolt forward again with frantic movements, uncertain of the cloaked thing to its left and uncertain of what is behind it. With lightning speed, the cloaked figure moves towards the fawn, which appears to be moving in slow motion now. Through a dark visage beneath the cloaked hood, Ral can make out smiling teeth, cruel and wicked. The incisor appears to gleam from the smile, looking almost metallic and contorted into sharp, elongated points. Without a blink, the evil being is upon the fawn, digging its mouth into the neck of the young deer. In a fit of practical ecstasy, the cloaked figure darts its head upward to the darkness above, letting out a hissing cry as blood from the fawn arcs outward from between its neck and the attacker's toothy mouth. The evil thing lowers its head and looks directly at Ral with the knowing and satisfying grimace that of a trained killer in climax. Ral shudders and curses aloud in his mind, wishing he could somehow flee from this terror. Guy's wrath, be damned me! Before Ral could even discern how to seek refuge, the crashing debris from the direction of the woods that was once behind the fawn reveals a gigantic beast. The Usara, likely on the hunt, emerges into the clearing, fangs bared, dripping with saliva, giant claws open and outstretched. Leaping through the air, appearing nearly 5 times the size of the cloaked figure and fawn, in a fraction of a second the evil humanoid flashes out from in front of the Usara, who tumbles into the ground with a roll that produces dust and debris flying in all directions. Slightly dazed, the gargantuan beast raises his body, but not before the Dark One appears again, with blurred speed to reach out with a claw-like open hand adorned with gruesome, long, black, pointed nails that tear into the soft underbelly of the Usara. With that action, the silence breaks. A terrifying roar of pain shakes the surrounding woods, and dust and webbing fall to the dirt below. The Usara, half-hunkered on its own hips, tries to swipe a paw at its adversary, now wrist deep into the belly of the beast. As the paws come out, the cloaked figure raises his other hand, and a dark, luminescent shadow forms between it and the Usara's attacking claw. Another roar, the one almost fearful and angry. The evil being rips his hand out, and a gush of blood and fleshy innards follows. The dark energy between his other hand and the beast's claw appears to reach an apex and exasperates, pushing the behemoth back and away from the evil being. A twisted laugh comes chortling out of the Dark One, and he turns his back to Ral and the entire scene. The fawn lay lifeless nearby, 2 streaming trickles of blood pouring from its neck. The Wicked One continues to walk away from the scene. Usara collapses on the ground again, chuffs a labored breath while fighting its burdening weight. The mythical beast manages one paw at a time to regain his ground, and once on his feet again, he charges after the cloaked figure, one brutal paw stretching out in attack. The Dark One shifts to the left in a blur away from the attacking paw, as if the movement was predicted. Usara already has its second paw arcing in the opposing direction. The paw connects with evil being briefly contorted, the body into a gelatinous shape, to which, like magic, the dark thing appears for a moment only to reappear behind Usara. Both paws outstretched, Usara tries to come to a stop, but lacks the agility to turn quick enough. Blood is spewing from his stomach, eyes wide, and for the first time ever in its life, appear frightened. its breathing labored and draining. The dark humanoid raises both hands with clawing black nails up to the darkness above, closes them into clenched fists, and makes a tearing motion down to the ground. The trees surrounding Usara snap, with trunks splintering out debris in all directions. The huge weight of these ancient and dead things crash down upon Usara, who lets out another chilling cry of agony. Kick and thrashing under the weight of the trees, the behemoth falls, still at the final strike of a large trunk to the head. Blood from Rip's stomach begins to slowly run from the pile of fur and trunks. Seemingly satisfied, the cloaked figure walks past the giant beast's wooden pile of a tomb, and all is silent as can be again. Into the shadows, this evil thing disappears. Even the vision from Raoul's view begins to grow a vignette, like shadow that closes in on him. His stomach fills with a disgust deeper than he could ever think possible. Now twisting and turning, colors are blurring. He feels the stomach turning again, and that desire to vomit every bit of fluid left in his guts. Feeling as though he is tumbling in every direction as he hears the gruff, deep voice in his head again. Seeming to be on his last breath, darker forces. Darker forces here. Now, use the knowledge wisely. Twisting, turning, a kaleidoscope of dark reds, deep navy and charcoal grays, the madness stops as he feels the sensation of his soaking wet deerskin pants. And the bristles of the Usara's forehead on his. Slowly Rao pulls back, opening his eyes. The beast lay silent. The crickets murmur an evening song in the first glimmer of twilight. His legs and body shiver, the urine in his pants damp and cold. Raoul's mind races, trying to process what he just experienced, while acknowledging not a single breath is uttered from the creature before him. The burning hot radiance of his dying fever no longer kindled, the monstrosity is cold to the touch as well. I must honor this beast, as it has honored me with its dying wisdom. Panting heavily, Rao drops another armful of pine boughs down on the irregular mound in front of him. The day was beginning to break with a soft purple glow illuminating the forest floor around him. Some birds had begun singing solemn lullabies, some short time before the first sight of light. Rao knew by the hue of the dawn that it would be a cloudy day, likely rain too. Judging by the cool, crisp breeze, he could almost taste it in the air. Overall, his senses were dull from the labor which was never ending, but for a short nap somewhere in the middle of the night. He was unable to dig a hole this close to the riverbank, and no hole he could dig with even the crudest of tools would suffice for such a large beast. The best he could provide was pine boughs and stones. He had been gathering and stacking the materials all night in the silence of the dark. In credit to his youth, his muscles and endurance sufficed. His pupils turned into acute, black beads that allowed for him to see just enough to work, only pausing several times for a quick drink from the stream. He formed a mound around Usara, the legend that was, covering it in pine boughs and stones, moss and twigs. Now with day breaking, it seems the whole forest was ready to cry over a great loss. One of the mythical creatures often spoken of, but almost never seen, is dead. As Rao began shuffling his tired legs back from more stones, the misting rain began. His work was nearly complete. He confirms to himself again that he must honor this great creature the best he can. Placing a few final pine boughs on the giant mound, part beast, part burial adornment, Rao slowly lowers himself to his knees. He's in the place roughly where he touched forehead to forehead with the behemoth. Just a few inches below the tangle of rock and branches lies Usara, to which Rao places his hands on the mound, reciting the ritual to guide him, that best he can remember. Blessed Mother, Father Sky, may you send thy stork on golden wing. Please take this lonely soul and place it gently in the stork's basket. Great sky, come down to Mother Plain. May thy clouds blanket her mountains. Provide the warmth we need when looking upon this earthen casket. May no burden of this loss be too great that we may be reborn. Return the flesh to Mother, and soul to the stork you may release. Shall the sky fall to grieve such tears in this moment of reflection? We ask that we are forgiven of our trespasses with thy peace. Rao removes his hands from the mound and clenches the dirt beside his knees. Levitating his arms over the mound, he releases the dirt, palms open, up pointing downward. As the dirt falls, he says, "We are not of this earth." Thank you. This has been the reading of Chapter 1 of Rao of the Sky Mountain People, written by James A. Greig.